So, I am, of course, a big fan of the Swedish model. I've even been known to stop with my fork halfway to my mouth when it hits me yet again that there really is a whole country, in fact now it's most of Scandinavia, where society in general has recognised that buying someone for sex is a sick thing to do. To me that's a minor miracle of unbelievable proportions, but it's not perfect. In short, I'd say they've reached the right conclusion, but for not quite the right reasons. My reasons for being against paid sex is based on the essential nature of capitalism, namely its need to always find more and more ways to turn our humanity into a commodity that it can sell. At one time it was just aching arms, then it was a phony smile, and now they're coming for your ass, literally. So that to me is why paid sex is wrong. It's not just something two sad individuals do at random. No, it's the cutting edge of the evil system under which we live. It's where capitalism has to go next if it's going to find new ways to feed its insatiable desire to take people's lives, suck out all the authenticity, and turn them into commodities. In Sweden, however, they take a less dramatic approach. They say paying for sex is wrong because it's about men abusing women, so it's unacceptable in a society which believes in gender equality. And in 99% of cases, I'd agree with that analysis. But unfortunately, the other 1% provides an opportunity for the loony libertarians to get in and undermine the whole idea. The problem being that the Swedish model assumes all women in the sex industry are victims. So, if those pesky libertarians can find just a few women who'll say they chose to be sex workers, that's all they need to prove their case and pass themselves off as the voice of liberal-minded common sense. I've already shown in previous videos why, in the real world, paid sex is very far from liberating. But let me offer another analogy, namely, people who want to sell one of their kidneys. After all, from a libertarian perspective, why shouldn't they? They're grown adults, so surely they can decide for themselves on the pros and cons of such choice. Surely the role of society should be limited to harm reduction, i.e. making sure the clinics they go to are staffed by well-trained professionals, etc. Or more realistically, if the sex industry is anything to go by, gesturing ineffectually in that direction, then leaving them to get on with it as before. But anyway, yeah, once those safeguards are in place, sort of, there will, of course, be no reason why there shouldn't be adverts all over your TV giving people information about this particular life choice. But the thing is, everyone realises that the libertarian option just doesn't apply when it comes to selling your kidneys. For some reason, though, while everyone agrees that your internal organs have a special significance which means they shouldn't be treated as just another commodity, when it comes to your external sex organs, somehow that's different. And I think the reason for this is because, while having your kidneys removed is obviously gruesome, a lot of people still vaguely imagine that paid sex is somehow, well, sexy. And that shallow-minded identification is so persuasive that the loony libertarians can even get away with describing those of us who are against the sex industry as sex negative, which, as Gail Dines has already pointed out, is like saying that people who don't want to eat McDonald's are food negative. But there you go, we live in such a messed up world that this ridiculous version of freedom through paid sex has already managed to get prostitution legalised in Australia, New Zealand, and now probably Canada too. What is it about these English-speaking ex-colonials? Anyway, the problem is that in the rarefied atmosphere of a courtroom, the Swedish perspective isn't always effective against the individualist spin which a well-paid lawyer can put on the concept of human rights. So ultimately, those of us who oppose the commodification of sex will have to make that case in terms of society's right to decide collectively what its norms are. And in that context, the handful of happy hookers who front these legal challenges should be seen not as freedom fighters, but as antisocial house slaves who don't see why the rest of us want to abolish slavery. In much the same way that someone telling you they really do want a chance to sell one of their kidneys is nothing more than an indication of how bizarre and how desperate some people can be. Now, obviously it can cause problems if society's norms become heavy-handed, and I'd be the first to oppose that. But at the moment we're very much going in the opposite direction, given that capitalism's latest trick is to use this individualist version of human right to justify its drive to turn us all into items for sale. So while I'm sure the Swedish approach is more realistic in the real world of pragmatic politics, given that it can piggyback on the already accepted concept of gender equality, we may end up needing to embrace a fully fledged analysis of capitalist commodification if we're finally going to manage to put those libertarian loonies back in their box.